Well, you may not be familiar with today's guest. He's not a household name yet. Yet. That's the operative word, because I have no doubt the titles, bracelets, and poker fame are headed his way, and prize money, of course, too. The reason they play, right? Cold, hard cash. He's only 24, plays by the name Potential MN on PokerStars. He's won more than $1 million online, about 300,000 at the World Series of Poker, 3 final tables, including a very impressive 6 cashes at the Rio this summer. And he just came 7th at the Midwest Poker Classic. What a player. A young gun. Ryan Laplante is our guest today. Ryan, thanks for being a high roller, man.
Thanks for inviting me on the show. I really appreciate it. Breakout year for me. I've got no complaints about the last 6 months, really, or 7 months for that matter. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next 6 months, next couple of years. I feel as though I'm really starting to hit my groove. My game's by far the best ever, and I've been starting to catch a little heat as well, which, the two combined, you get some pretty good results coming.
Absolutely. Talk about your World Series, your 45th annual WSOP. You're only 24. You've been there the last couple of years. You mentioned it, a breakout season. It must have been great for you at the Rio this year.
Yeah, it was my 4th summer at the series. It's been going, since I just turned 21. And first 2 years, as you said, first 2 years I had some pretty good results as well. I got a final table each summer. And then my 3rd year, I finally had, the junior slump where I pretty much bricked. And then this year's really been incredible. I started off with deep run in a 1K. Well, first I ran somewhat deep in the Millionaire Maker. Then I had 27th or something like that in a 1K Turbo. Then I had a 30th in a 2500. And then had a week of nothing, and then finally got my first 6-figure cash ever, taking 5th place in the 3K No Limit Hold'em event for 113K. And then after that, I actually continued to put up some results, including having a 50th in the 5K and another cash as well. So I had an incredible summer. Honestly, nothing that I would really take back or anything. People who watched my live stream, which honestly this is what I'm happiest about, is that the friends of mine and stuff who watched the live stream said that I played perfectly and brilliantly, and that, there are a couple spots that they probably would have gone broken that I managed to, make the correct decision barely, including making, some really good hero folds, some pretty good bluffs, that kind of stuff. So, I've been playing really well, and I've been putting myself up, to be into spots in which I can make life-changing amounts of money. And while I didn't quite do that, the fact that I'm constantly putting myself in those positions means that it's only a matter of time before, I really have the kind of success that I want in the game, which, the past couple of years I can't really complain either way. So it's been a pretty good year so far.
Yeah, that's the key. You got to be in that spot, right? And I have the feeling you're going to be in that spot a few more times. Before we talk about the final table, how many events did you play this summer, and what was your approach? Are you one of these guys who gets their chips in early because they want to double, triple up so they can play the way they play? Or are you one of these guys that wait for your spots, you don't mind if you get short, and you can just wait because you realize the value of a tournament life? Which approach do you take in these tournaments?
I'm definitely a wait-and-see kind of guy. I don't mind, pushing thin edges and trying to have a lot of fun, but, for the most part, Helmuth has actually been right about this over the years, is that your tournament life does matter a lot. It really does. The difference between having, 10 big blinds and being out, that's a big dollar EV difference. Especially as, the more chips you gain, the less dollar each chip is worth. The less chips you have, the more, dollar each chip is worth. So because of that, staying alive in a tournament is actually really important. So if you're going to make big bluffs and do that kind of stuff, at least, when I do big bluffs and that kind of stuff, in general, I'm going to at least have some chips remaining. That way, if it's wrong, I can still play. I can still, try to spin it back up. And I'm a turbo player at heart, so for me, having 25 big blinds or less, that's my comfort zone. It really is. And obviously, I'm now really happy having above 25 big blinds, but you give me less than 20 big blinds, and there are very few players in the world who can keep up with me. It allows me to stay very patient. If I take a big suck out and I'm down to 10 big blinds, honestly, I'm fine. Because there have been many tournaments in which I've spun up 10 big blinds into having final table runs, or even winning tournaments after being down to just a couple of big blinds. So far this summer I played 26 events, so it was a pretty long grind. I made tons and tons of day twos. I was running deep every single day. Like I had plans to play like 2-5 and 5-10 cash games on the side, but I didn't have any time to play a single cash game, not a single hand of cash, so it meant I had a really great summer. And honestly, for the most part, I really don't try to sprint up at the early stages. Honestly, I generally spend the first couple of hours figuring out who's at my table, figuring out how the pros are adjusting, figure out who the recreational players are, how they're playing, and then as I get more and more information, I'm more and more willing to get out of the grind mode, where I start making bigger and bigger plays. Simply because poker being a game of limited information, if you're going to do stuff that's somewhat high variance and you're going to risk large portions of your set, you should have a lot of information to back that up. So I like sitting around a little bit, finding out who my opponents are, and then making the decisions based off of that. And then I also like trying to build a decent image for myself. For instance, I might occasionally 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet bluff in the early stages a decent amount. Do things like, getting a good triple barrel bluff. I try to pick my spots fairly well, but when I'm doing those plays, for the most part, I'm making sure that they aren't going to be for like 3/4 of my stack or whatever. I might occasionally get in a small little 4-bet bluff that'll be for like a 6th or 7th of my stack, and then I'll show it just to build that aggressive image. Then as I get this really young, aggressive image going, and I generally am playing a lot more hands than everyone else because I like to see flops, I like to make decisions on turns and rivers. That's where a lot of your edges are going to be built when you're playing deeper stacks. And then from there, as I get this really good image built, people stop believing me. That allows me to win these really big pots when I've got some disguised holdings, like, 5-flop, 5-flop like an up-down straight draw or backdoor flush draw or something, and I get there, and it's because I'm holding like 3-5 suited. It's going to be fairly easy for me to win a really big pot when I've got this hyper-aggressive image.
Well, I want to talk more about the importance of a tournament life. You hear it all the time, especially on the live streams, which we'll talk about later. But some of these commentators that sat alongside David Tuchman talked about how they just busted in the first level. They were trying to get chips. It was a 5K buy-in. And I wonder, how do they afford to do that? Whereas you watch, as you mentioned, the Phil Hellmuth approach, where the tournament life is so valuable, and you never know when the cards are going to turn. And as you mentioned, you got 10 big blinds. All of a sudden, you win a couple of pots, and you've got huge chips with a chance to win late. I I like that approach myself.
You definitely need to find a very fine line between those two strategies. You don't want to go crazy because, each chip you gain is worth less than the chips that you have. Simple economics based off of how tournaments, play out, how they're structured. And so because of that, you do need to value your tournament life. There's something called independent chip model, ICM, that will turn your chip stack into a real-world dollar amount based off of how many players are left, based off of everyone having equal skill, and it figures out mathematically that if you finish in each position X percentage of the time, that you'll get paid out that amount of money. So obviously there's that to be considered as well, but in the earlier stages, your tournament life doesn't matter quite as much as late stages, and there are periods throughout the tournament in which there are spikes in which it matters a lot more or a lot less. For instance, in tournaments in which there are really flat payout structures and it starts off really small, the moment you hit in the money, your tournament life stops to matter very much, and because in order to gain a lot of money, you need to start running really deep in the tournament. However, right before the money hits, your tournament life might be worth a lot, and the early stages, your tournament life does matter a little bit, but the farther away from the start of the tournament you get, your tournament life matters less and less. And the closer you get to the final table, your tournament life starts to matter more and more and more. And that's not saying that you shouldn't not take risks. It's just that if you're going to take a play that's going to be somewhat high variance, so you want to run a really big bluff, or you're deciding to, check raise flop to shove turn on a flush draw or whatever. If you're going to make those kinds of plays, you need to make sure that you have a lot of information backing up that play is going to be very profitable. If you aren't confident that it's not going to be very profitable, and you have a lot of ICM pressure to contend with, so in which periods in which your tournament life is worth a lot more than normal, then you're going to not want to make that kind of play unless your information lines up with it. But in situations in which the tournament life doesn't matter quite as much, you can still make those kinds of plays and have it be profitable. You just need to be somewhat certain that's going to be profitable. I'm not the kind of person who is going to take a flip early on for my tournament life unless I'm confident that's going to be a very profitable spot. there are situations in which that's going to be and it's not going to be. It's just, you're just going to have to look at what the exact situation is, how much, plus dollar EV, plus chip equity it's going to be, and if it's going to be very profitable for you, then take it. If you're uncertain, then chances are you shouldn't. And that's where I come in when I'm playing tournaments, is that if I'm at a situation in which I'm uncertain about whether it's going to be profitable or not, if it's a low variance situation, I might be willing to take it. But if it's a high variance situation, I'm never going to take it due to tournament life.
That brings us into the final table experience. You mentioned ICM. I mean, you're a young guy. I know you're fully aware of that moment. What's at stake? You've got the cameras on you, the crowd's watching, so much money. Also, a little piece of poker immortality as well should you win the bracelet. So you've navigated a large field, and now you're right there with a shot to win. That must have been quite exciting for you. Can you reflect on it for us?
Definitely. Especially this year. This year when I went into the final table, it was my largest buy-in cash ever, and it was my first time going into World Series final table in which I had the chip lead. And, I had this very, very large chip lead going into it. But the thing is that when you're in that moment, you aren't really, at least I personally, wasn't necessarily thinking that much about the fact that I was playing for, $500,000 in a bracelet and all that stuff. For the most part, throughout the course of the tournament, well, obviously that kind of stuff was on my mind. I honestly wasn't really certain about what the payouts were or how much was really up top. I wasn't trying to, know what that information was. I mean, obviously it matters as far as ICM stuff is concerned, but most final tables pay out very similarly as far as what percentage to each position. And I already, from playing a lot of World Series events, already had a pretty good idea as to how flat or how top heavy their payouts were. So from that, I already had a pretty good understanding of the ICM going in. And from there, I just tried to not focus on the fact that I was playing for life-changing amounts of money and, going after my first bracelet, and instead just focus on the fact that, it's a tournament, and I know how to play tournaments, and I understand the theory and the strategy involved, and it being a very stacked final table, I knew that I was going to have to play, my best, and that if I didn't bring my A-plus game, that I was going to get ran over, and that if I was thinking and worrying too much about what was at stake, that I wasn't going to be able to play my best. So instead, I just tried my best to take my mind off of that stuff, just focus on making the best decisions that I could, and also, try to keep in mind to some degree of the position that I was in, because I didn't want to punt it off or do something, really stupid that I would regret for years. But, at the other end of the spectrum, I knew that if I played scared, that I was just going to get run over. So I tried my best to just stay focused on playing my A game and treating it like another tournament. And honestly, for any tournament you play, if you can't go into it with that kind of mindset, or if you can't be comfortable with taking a very profitable high variance play when it presents itself, to take the coin flips that you're going to need to take at various stages throughout it, then you probably shouldn't be playing that buy-in. Even if it is something that's going to be a more of a life experience kind of spot, unless you don't mind not having an edge. Simply because that's where all your money is going to be made long run in tournaments, is from being able to run deep and then making the good decisions when you're put into those situations.
So when you're in that situation and you realize you've got to show your cards to the entire world, or watching with a 15-minute delay, you said afterwards you were happy because your friends tell you you made good decisions. In the moment, is that something that you were thinking about? Oh my God, what if I play this hand wrong? Everyone's going to criticize me in the poker forums. I mean, that's got to be tough.
Not really. Obviously, you certainly want to have people, understand the plays you made, and to agree with the fact that you made good decisions. But then again, when you're in the moment, there's going to be information that you see or think you see that can lead you to play a hand differently than normally might not. Like, for instance, I had a hand earlier in that tournament in which I min cold 4-bet 9-4 offsuit versus Barney Bowman, and I knew in that moment that it was going to be a very profitable play. And I also knew why, once I showed the hand and Poker News had written about it, that I was going to get some flack for playing the manner I did, because in the way in which I set up the hand, I was always going to get called by Barney Bowman, and we were always going to see a flop. But I was comfortable with that fact because I knew that the times that his range was fairly weak and wide, and it was in this case, that he would just call, and then he would miss something like 80% of the time, in which I could continuation bet and take it down. Now, I received a decent amount of flack for that because my sizing, he's never folding. But I knew that and was comfortable with that, and it didn't really matter. And obviously, I played the final table in that same kind of manner in which, I was just going to make the best decisions that I could. And if I receive flack for some of my decisions, that's perfectly fine. People view poker and view situations differently. And in the moment, you're going to pick up on things that people watching the stream might not. And you might miss things that people watching the stream might not. So for you, what might be an obvious play going one way or the other, someone watching the stream might see it going the opposite direction as whatever you thought. So a clear call or fold to you might be a clear fold or call to someone watching the stream.
You're a young guy. You've had some good success. When you're at the World Series, the magnitude of that event, everything is heightened. When you come across a guy, a veteran like Barney Boatman, or maybe a guy like Phil Hellmuth or Daniel Negreanu, when you're sitting across from these guys, I know you're trying to play your best and find out how you can exploit their play, but are you also watching them closely to pick up things to improve your game?
I mean, to some degree, yes, but for the most part, honestly, when you're watching someone at the table, there really isn't that much you can pick up, to learn from them. Actually, this year was the first time I ever played with Hellmuth. And, something I realized really quickly over the very short time period that I got to play with him somewhat deep in the 5K is that, honestly, he has a great table presence. Like, his table presence is perfect for being able to control people at the table. And honestly, when you're playing poker, that should be your goal when you're playing live, is to have the kind of table presence and game in which you can control other people's decisions and actions as much as possible. And the way in which people, interact with them, talk to them, the image that he gives out to others, like, he's a very intelligent person, and he uses that image brilliantly. And, seeing him hold his own deep in the 5K, it was very clear that he really understands the game, and he really understands live poker to a very high degree, and he's able to use that image, brilliantly. And, that's something that I was able to pick up. But for the most part, when you play poker with people, like, you generally won't really learn that much from them at the table. But I definitely just noticed things like table presence. Like Eric Seidel, when I played with them this year, had a very different table presence than Hellmuth. Eric was just like, quiet, calm, cool, collected, gave like the death eyes, just staring people down, doing that kind of stuff. And it was very intimidating to play with. While Hellmuth was like very jovial and laughing a lot and, making fun of himself and, trying to get in people's heads, trying to get them to do stupid and crazy things versus him. And, knowing that those two different styles that are complete opposites of each other can work so well, just shows just how much of the game is, how complex the game can be, especially for live. And that if you understand it to a very high level, how much you can use your image to your advantage no matter what it is.
We talked about the WSOP live streams. That's how I came to know you, watching those things. I'm a huge fanatic. And you were great alongside David Tuckman. Really enjoyed those shows.
Thanks.
He's a former guest of High Roller Radio as well. So you're broadcasting to the world. You're in the booth alongside Tuckman as well as some other co-hosts. When I say work with them, I really mean talk poker with them. That must have been a great experience. A learning experience as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. I had a lot of fun doing that. In fact, I was probably more nervous doing that than I was, playing my final table itself. Because with something like playing, I mean, I know how to do that, to a fairly decent degree. I'm very confident in those decisions that I'm making. And, for me, it's just another poker tournament. And obviously, if I made mistakes, it'd suck or not. But, for the most part, my decisions could be argued and dissected pretty well. And, I could come off as, having played well no matter if I had or hadn't. Or at least I could justify my, decisions and, what I did. But, like, when you're in the booth, it's very easy to say something that just sounds really, really bad. And it's really hard to, to have a commentary that flows well with what's happening on the screen as well. And I think that's something that Tuckman does absolutely brilliantly, is that he's able to understand the ebb and flow of doing the long commentating sessions. And he's also really good at leading the other commentators along and helping them, sound better and be better. Like, for instance, before and after each of my commentating sessions with Tuckman, he'd give me advice and, to slow down, to speed up, breaks, that kind of stuff, to flesh things out, more or less. And, if I came off really good, it was in large part because of the advice that he gave me on how to come off better on how to sound better, not to be too wordy or too in-depth, not to speak too fast or too slow, and try to have that really good give and take between him and the game going on. And yeah, I learned a lot from doing it with him. Also just learned a lot just, talking about hands with other great guest commentators that were on there. I managed to do it with Joe Cata for a bit and for Calvin Anderson. And both of them are players who I greatly respect and look up to, especially Cal. He is absolutely brilliant, one of the best players in the world, hands down, across multiple game types. So being able to do commentating with them was a lot of fun. It was really cool. And I really look forward to doing commentating next year. I had a lot of fun doing it this year. And I think going forward that, commentating and doing that kind of stuff is definitely something that I would always be interested in doing, even if I stopped playing poker.
Well, let me go right to my next question then, because I was going to say you're a pup in this business, Ryan. What are your goals in poker as you attempt to advance your career? You mentioned there broadcasting. I mean, some players write books, some start websites, training sites. Some simply just play, and that's all they do. How are you treating poker as a business right now?
I mean, going forward, as far as like on the felt kind of stuff I'd like to do, I'd really like to get a bracelet sometime. I mean, my goal right now is to get it before I'm 30, but that kind of goal, it's not something that you can really expect to have happen or not happen. And there's so much variance in poker that I could make 15 final tables and not win one, and that would just be that. That's how it goes. So obviously, getting a bracelet sometime, that would be great. I'd also like to hit like 5 million in tournament earnings or even 10 million in tournament earnings sometime throughout my career. Again, that kind of thing isn't really something that you can, choose, really. It just
no, but it's important to have goals, right? Important to have goals.
Yeah, definitely. It's important to have things that you're working for. So I generally try to work towards short-term goals and have like vague long-term goals. Like, for instance, I'd like to be very, financially well off as far as at least being able to buy a house and, have a decent car and live in a nice neighborhood and, be able to, when I have a kid, have them go to a good school, that kind of stuff. Just a basic kind of real life, getting set up financially kind of stuff goes. And having it come because of poker, that would be wonderful. And obviously I'd like to continue to play professionally for, as many years as possible. As long as I still love the game, I'm going to play it professionally no matter how well or bad I'm doing. I'm just going to keep working hard and making sure that my game is keeping up with the rest of the game and that I'm putting in enough hard work and volume to outrun variance and make sure that I'm consistently making a living.
Well, you're off to a great start, my man, and if you keep doing what you're doing, I think it's going to happen, no doubt. Now, for our listeners who have not played the main event, I mean, can you describe the atmosphere, not only at the table, but in the room as well? I mean, it's got to be on your bucket list if you haven't played.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's the one event that I would say that, if you want to have the real World Series of Poker experience, that tournament really is it. I mean, obviously playing like the Millionaire Maker, the Monster Stack should be up there as well if you can't really afford the main event, but the main event really is the World Series. I mean, that tournament is just such a unique and surreal experience. I mean, I've only played it 4 times now. I've never made it past day 2. This year was my deepest run, which was the very end of day 2. And honestly, it's just such a unique experience. It's so hard to explain to someone who hasn't played in it. It's just like, I mean, I've explained in the past as, playing the main event, it's like being a kid on Christmas morning and finding out that you got every single present you ever wanted. Like, that's playing the main event. That is it in a nutshell. If you're a poker fanatic, that's how it'll feel to you. And busting the main event is like the exact opposite of that. It's like being that kid and watching that tree get set on fire. Like, that's busting the main each year and not making a deep run, not main cashing, not anything. So each year is just such a great experience, and even busting, while it hurts so much, the moment I bust, I always just want to be like, can I play another bullet, please? Can it start in a week? Is there something, anything, nothing? Okay, I guess next year it'll be.
Wondering, it's been a few years since the WSOP decided to implement the November 9. I mean, before you started playing the main event, right? It was controversial at the time when they did it, not liked by many, including me. But now, my mind has been changed, man. This is a spectacle. It's turned into one of the best showcases in sport. What about that 3 or 4 month break and the November 9 showdown? Good for poker, right?
I think that they have a break is good, but I think the length of the break isn't good. Like, I think it'd be far better for them to do, like, a couple of weeks, maybe a month at the most, and to just have it. Well, I guess the reason why they probably can't really do that is so they can get all the episodes on TV. But I feel as though it'd still be fine if they did it like that and just did a live stream with it with like an hour delay or something like that, and have whole cards and have it play out, and just have that play out on like, on online, or even have it on ESPN, but have it on like ESPN 3 or something, and then have the more TV friendly version of it play out as it follows through with the rest of their TV scheduling. I mean, I feel as though when they like have it wait so long that it doesn't having that long of a break kind of just like slows it down, doesn't build it up quite as much. I mean, I guess the fact that it is at the end of the TV stuff, it probably helps a decent amount, but it just seems to me that it'd be a decent amount better, especially for the players, to have it, within a couple weeks after, instead of waiting 3-4 months.
Yeah, a couple of weeks, you still got the momentum of the main event. Everyone's still talking about it. You take that 2-week break or a month break, and then bam, you've got a huge event.
Yeah, I feel as though you really lose some of the momentum. I mean, not as much because of the TV scheduling follow through, but I still feel as though that there is some gap in that momentum. I don't really know how they could do it much better, though. I mean, I don't mind the fact that there is the November 9, and I don't mind the fact that there is a break, and maybe even the fact that it does follow through with the rest of the TV stuff. Maybe that is best. I'm not an expert on TV stuff or anything like that. I just feel as though, as far as the players goes, and as far as being an avid viewer and just being an avid fan of the game, that for me, I would prefer it to be just a couple of weeks, or even like only a week. Get some time to know who the final table are, get some time to do stories on them, do interviews and that kind of stuff, which you can do all that over the course of a week, and then just have them play it out and finish it up, and then have it all be on TV and follow through with the rest of the schedule, and have like a live stream or something going for the super avid fans, guys like me who watch every hand and analyze the decisions and have fun doing that kind of stuff.
We're on the line with Ryan Laplante, a 24-year-old professional poker player. Very, very good poker player, folks. Mark Newhouse, Ryan, back-to-back final tables. I mean, what kind of feat is that? You play the circuit, you know the highs and lows. You've already talked about variance. This guy survived 13,000 runners over the past 2 years. And this year, he's in good chip position as well. Third, I think. I mean, this is remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely the most incredible run by anyone at the World Series. And honestly, it'll probably go down as one of the greatest achievements in poker history. And honestly, like, I feel as though, as far as like that being the case, for me it's kind of a mixed bag, because like him doing something like that, like, there's just a lot of variance involved, and he just ran perfect at the right time. He played actually fairly big summer and bricked pretty much everything. Actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure he did brick everything, because on his headed mob, his last cash was the main event final table. So the fact that he just bricks everything and the final table is the main again, there's a lot of variance involved in that. And obviously he's a good player, and obviously that's going to go down as the greatest poker achievement, at least poker tournament achievement. But I feel as though, again, like that kind of title should be left for things that are more skill-based, more, less, pure variance-based. Doing stuff like winning bracelets every single year, or like, the long-term consistency. I respect that kind of stuff more than I'll respect something like Newhouse final tabling back-to-back. Like Helmuth's bracelets, or Ivy's results, or whatever, stuff that occurs over years and years. To me, that's a lot more impressive than someone final tabling the main back-to-back. But then again, this is never going to happen again, ever. Like, the main event could run for the next 1,000 years, and someone final tabling it back-to-back years, assuming it stays the same size, isn't going to happen again. And the fact that that's the case, yeah, this run's incredible, it's remarkable, and honestly, I hope he wins it, because then he will have 100% solidified himself as poker greatness. And whether it's deserved or not deserved, people can argue over that, whether the luck involved, matters more or not. And, who cares, really? Like, the fact that we get to watch this, the fact that it'll be on TV, that we can watch him play both years, and maybe this year we'll get to really see him play, really make, a top 3 run in it. And that'd be incredible. As far as, like, the poker fan in me goes, like, yeah, this is great. And even as far as, just the professional in me goes, as far as, understanding that it is just incredible dumb luck, the fact those two, for me, they balance out, and I'm just looking forward to seeing him play it out and just hoping that he does well.
Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned earlier, he's put himself in a position to win again. And my goodness, if he wins the main event this year, you talk about poker immortality. You're right, whether it's deserved or not, he'll get it. Now, Ryan, we're running short on time here, but I want to talk about online poker versus live poker from a personal standpoint, because I've come to the realization that while I do well in live cash games, 1, 2, 3, 5, I do not fare so well online playing 25 cent, 50 cent, or even 10 cent, 25 cent. But online nowadays, it seems like it's skill versus skill. I mean, it's tough. How would you describe the play online versus live cash games?
I mean, honestly, like, the average 1 cent, 2 cent probably plays like the average $1, $2. The average, probably, I would say 2 cent, 5 cent, or 5 cent, 10 cent is going to play like the average $2, $5.
Unbelievable.
I mean, for me, playing online is more about getting in volume and, being able to make consistent money. Like, for instance, I'm traveling up to play World Championship of Online Poker throughout the month of September. And over that time period, which will be about 3 weeks, I plan on playing around 1,500 tournaments and somewhere around $70,000 to $100,000 in buy-ins. And, 1,500 tournaments, I might not play that over the course of my career for live. Yet I'm playing that over 3 weeks online.
Unbelievable.
And obviously, while I enjoy that and it'll be a lot of fun, it'll also be just a lot of really, really, really hard work, because the people I'm playing versus are going to be some of the best in the world. And it'll be consistently every single day, 16 tabling, 12 plus hour days, and playing versus some of the better players in the world. So for me, that's more hard work and a long grind. And while I do enjoy it, honestly, for me, playing live poker is more about having fun and enjoying it. Oh yeah, you can make money doing it. There is a lot of variance involved, so I don't expect to make consistent money playing live. But playing online, that's where I try to make, consistent money, but it's also just so much harder. Like, to give you a really good idea as to how the tournaments compare, I would say the average $55 buy-in tournament that I'll be playing, over the course of WCOOP will probably play as hard or harder than the 3K that I final table. And the average $109 will probably play harder than the average 5K at the World Series. And then if you're looking at the really tough stuff, like the 5K main event, will play probably harder than anything that's not like, 25K mixed max or like 10K 6 max, that kind of stuff. So like, it's just so much harder. You can generally like do like a 20 or 30x conversion as far as the difficulty goes compared to online to lot. So $100 like a 3K, 2 cent, 5 cent, that'd be like, playing, honestly, it is like playing 1-2 or like 2-5, really. And 1 cent, 2 cent honestly plays like 1-2. So the fact that there's like that big of a jump, if you're someone who more enjoys live poker, but you do want to get experience and get better, that's what online poker can be great for. The fact that you can play versus much tougher competition, but you're doing it at a much, much, much cheaper rate, it can turn you into a much better player for playing live and for making better decisions, and then can help you make more money. So you can play much tougher games online, to play much bigger games live, and try to do a lot better because of that. Honestly, it's really, for me, playing online is more about making money, and playing live is more about having fun and enjoyment. And also playing online is about getting better as well. But, I really enjoy both, and I think they both can be a lot of fun. And for each person, they should just see what they enjoy more or less and just do that.
Well, absolutely. That's great advice there, Ryan. I do appreciate that. Back to 1 cent, 2 cent for me it is. But I do like the $5 Omaha high-low tournaments on Full Tilt because, A, it's $5, B, it's a new game, and for some reason that game is clicking with me, and that's what online poker is about, finding what you like, playing at a level you enjoy.
Definitely.
And I realize that when I go to play live poker, that's when I break out the $200, $300, maybe a $500 night. I don't mind risking that live, whereas online I can lose $25 and just feel like they ran right over me. Anyway, Ryan, we're running out of time. I want to do rapid fire. I'm going to ask you some things, some word association. Real quick answer to these, okay? Three guys in poker you look up to and you respect, and why?
Negreanu, Coleman, and I'm trying to think of someone else. Honestly, I would say Hellmuth. And as far as why, Negreanu, he's just been the face of the game for so long. He's been so great for media. He really is an intelligent person, and while he does say and do some loony things, I mean, overall, he's honestly a very good guy. I haven't heard anything bad about him ever, to any degree, and he's been playing professionally for a very, very long time, and results have always kept up with the rest of the industry. And when he realized that, like, recently that the online game had passed him up, this was probably like 6 years ago or so, he decided to hop into 100, 200 online versus the best in the world. And at the start of him doing that, there would be lists 100 people long trying to play him because he was that much of a fish. And by the end of him doing it, it was over the course of a couple of months, there wouldn't be a waiting list. That's how good he got that fast, playing versus the best cash players on the planet. And I know there's some bet going on recently, or people wanted to bet against him, and he had said that he'd be willing to put up $1 million to beat 25, 50 online. And honestly, over a couple of weeks, I think he could, learn from some of the better players and beat it perfectly fine. And the fact that he can still keep up at the highest, most difficult games in the world just shows how great of an ambassador he is and how great of a player he still is. I think he'll go down as one of the best players to ever play the game, and I think it'll be well deserved. Coleman, honestly, I know he's been getting some flack for dodging interviews and doing that kind of stuff, but I feel as though that the points he made regarding as to why he didn't want to, laud the fact that, hey, I'm a young poker player who made millions and millions and millions, like, I feel as though that his points were brought out, they were said brilliantly, and that the media, they shouldn't be jumping on him for, not wanting to do interviews and that kind of stuff. I mean, I get why they are. That's how they make money, is by either having some kind of controversy, or at least by having people willing to, be ambassadors for the game. And honestly, he doesn't owe the industry anything. If he doesn't want to be an ambassador for the game, and he just wants to, play poker and just do that, that's his decision to make, and he's perfectly fine in doing that. And honestly, I respect him for sticking to his guns, and for doing so with very positive, moralistic reasons. He's not just, doing it to be a jerk or anything. He has good reasoning behind it. And he actually said that he would do interviews based around helping out the charity, because he cares more about doing that kind of stuff than he does about, putting high-stakes poker players on a pedestal. So I definitely look up to his reviews. I think he's an incredibly skilled player. I was fortunate enough to play versus him this year in the 5K. He played brilliantly. He's a really smart guy. He's a really nice guy. He's the best heads-up hyper player in the world. Honestly, I think as he keeps playing and stays in the industry, he's going to be looked to the same degree as maybe like a Patrick Antoni is. A quiet, just brilliant player, someone who doesn't really seek the spotlight, stays out of it, but everyone knows is just one of the best at what they do. And Hellmuth, honestly, I respect the fact that he can keep his image the way that he has and use it so brilliantly. And honestly, when it comes down to it, the stuff that really matters is that he's a great father, he's a great family man. The people who know him really well will never ever say anything bad about him. And honestly, he's been great for the game. The kind of stuff that he does, it at least puts a spotlight on the industry, puts a spotlight on him, and honestly, that's perfectly fine. Anything that isn't bad, isn't bad press for the poker industry is a great thing, and he's given the poker industry a lot of press. And honestly, his results, at this point, they're starting to just speak for themselves. Yes, people will say that maybe he hasn't kept up with the game quite as much, at least with Nolan Hold'em, and while that may be true to some degree, no, he probably couldn't beat $200 buy-in W-Coop event or, that kind of stuff. But the thing is that when it comes to live poker yet, he still is a great player. He can use his image brilliantly. I think he's solidly plus EV in WSOP 5Ks and that kind of stuff, which are very, very, very difficult. And the fact that he's still profitable in those kinds of difficult games live, and that he's turned himself into a great mixed game player as well, he's definitely someone to look up to as far as his game's concerned, as far as the spotlight he brings to the industry. And while, yes, he is still the poker brat, which, behaving like that, maybe not the most respectable, I mean, he does use it to his advantage. He does, and he has built a brand around it. So more power to him.
Three great players indeed: Daniel Negreanu, Phil Hellmuth, and of course Daniel Coleman. If you're not familiar with that name, he won the big one for one drop this year. What was it, $15.3 million or something?
Yeah,
wow.
Right around there.
Shot clock and live tournament poker. What do you think?
Honestly, I don't think it's needed. I really don't. I just feel as though that there needs to be less pressure on people as far as calling the clock on others. Like, you should be able to call the clock on someone and have it not be a big deal, like, socially. And honestly, I'm at the point that when I play live, for live tournaments, live cash, I generally don't call the clock ever. But for live tournaments, for stuff like 1Ks, 1500s, 2500s, 3Ks, generally after about 2.5 minutes, I'll always call the clock no matter what. And for the main event, if they're an amateur, I'll give them like 5-6 minutes. If they're professional, I'll give them like 4 minutes though. I just feel as though there needs to be less pressure on others as far as calling clock being a bad thing, and we can police ourselves. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, I feel as though having a shot clock itself would scare away a lot of recreational players, which we really don't want to do. I mean, I think something like having a shot clock specific tournament would be cool. You know, I'm the kind of person who's perfectly comfortable making their decisions in 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and I've never taken longer than like 2 minutes on a decision ever. But I feel as though that adding the shot clock could add some unique situations, especially if you're only given like 15-20 seconds to decide. And especially for live poker, online it's obviously 15-20 seconds is a long time, but for live it really isn't that much, and having a shot clock specific tournament, yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. But I feel as though shot clocks themselves just really aren't needed.
Accessories at the poker table: shades, iPods, headphones. What do you think?
I think all that stuff is fine, just as long as you use headphones and computers and whatever, you know, in a socially acceptable manner. You know, if it's distracting you from playing and if it's slowing up the game, you shouldn't really be using them. But if you're able to keep up fine with the game, then honestly anything's perfectly fine, really. Shades and that kind of stuff, I personally don't like using them. I feel as though having it block my vision and having it relax me is a bad thing. I'd rather have to stay focused, have to make sure that I'm not slipping, you know, with facial features and that kind of stuff. And also, I'd rather be able to see everything that's going on very clearly and very easily. And I feel as though shades can block that a little bit. I'll listen to music and do that kind of stuff, but I always like having at least one earbud out so I can hear everything that's going on, and I'll play the music very low. You know, I feel as though staying focused and making sure that you're always on top of what's going on, every decision, is really, really important to having a big edge live.
And the name Potential MN, what's that about?
So, potential is just, you know, the potential to be a professional. So, pretty self-explanatory. And then MN is just Minnesota. I grew up in a small town in central Minnesota, and when I made that name, I was in that small town in central Minnesota, Brainerd, and decided that potential itself was already taken on PokerStars, so I just went with MN for Minnesota.
Well, there you go, man. Hey, this has been a great chat, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Continued success, and thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun.